Benny Ocean had asked a question in the comments section of one of my recent videos on subjective morality, and I was talking about secular morality, and I'd made a point in the video that religious morality, Christian morality, is claimed to be objective, but it's actually not, that breaks down. And he'd asked me to expand on that. And I have in past videos. It's kind of difficult to do that, but I'm going to attempt to, and hopefully, I mean, I'm no theologian, hopefully my reasoning will make some sort of sense as to what you're asking. And Benny Ocean did mention in his comment that, you know, we're sort of told that God is objectively true, that he is objectively moral and perfect. And so, given that, I think we got to break down or branch out into two possibilities. Either there is an objective truth, logic, reason, rationality, and virtue, morality, that exists independent of God, and it's just that by his nature he is perfect, that he naturally adheres to all these things perfectly, or that these things actually flow from God. And maybe not all things. Maybe logic exists outside of God, but virtue is sort of what he says, or it stems from him. And certainly if virtue exists independent of God, but it's just that by his nature he is declared to be virtuous, then that would be objective. Where that breaks down, I think, is in that transmission of those virtues to us through Scripture and God's behavior, because he's not consistent. And so what are we to believe? That he's perfect, but he transmits, conflicting virtues to us? That doesn't make sense. Of course, if this virtue exists outside of God, but by his nature he adheres to it and then passes it to us through Scripture, we're not going to know what the actual virtue is. We're only going to know what we are told. And so are we to believe what we're told? Of course, God cannot lie, but he's inconsistent because he also sends strong delusions in Scripture. So you could never really know. All of Scripture could be a grand delusion. We don't know, right? And so I think that, in that sense, objective morality, when it comes to Christianity, breaks down. It's the inconsistency there that I think is the problem. And really, similarly, if virtue flows from God, then by nature it is subjective. God is a subject. He is not, it exists, it flows from him. He may be the divine subject, he may be the subject of record, but he is still a subject. And by definition, if it flows from him and not from any other source outside of him, it is subjective. We still have the same problem, I think, of consistency and God not sort of abiding by the same set of ethics sometimes that he passes on to other people. And again, I think morality, a key component of morality is universality. Otherwise, it's meaningless. Now, I'm sure some theists may argue that universality is not applicable in the case of theism, right? Because God is the supreme being and we're all his creation. I think that's immoral. What else can I say? I think universality is a principle that needs to apply when we're talking about morality regardless. However, having said all of that, it really doesn't matter because it's the consistency that I think is the problem. So to recap quickly, without putting too much emphasis on it, if virtue exists outside of God, then it is objective by definition, but it falls apart because of the inconsistency, and we have no way of verifying what actual virtue is. And if God is perfect, but then he contradicts his own, right? And if virtue flows from God, then it is by definition subjective, and we still have all the problems with contradiction and differing moral virtues handed down to us versus what God abides by. I hope that helps somewhat. It's been a while since I've sort of gone through the mental gymnastics of that. I'd be happy to, expand on it further if you like, or chat with you sometime about it. Thanks for the question, and thanks everyone for watching.